Hey, Duncan.
Hi, Vicky.
How's it going today?
It's good. We're actually being recorded video as well as audio today.
How are you feeling about that?
I feel pretty good about it.
I feel pretty good.
How about you?
I feel great. I'm excited. Our team was very helpful in putting it together, and
Good. And this is my office actually
Duncan's office
at work.
Yep,
We actually
at
have
Direction
real live kids next door
versus fake ones.
versus fake pretend patients. And yeah, welcome.
Welcome. Happy to have you guys here today.
Today we're going to do questions.
Yeah, so first time with the video and first time with some call-in questions that our viewers called in.
I think we have two.
We have two today.
We have a sound
Let's
crew.
just jump right into it.
Hi, Victoria. So my question is basically, how would you mitigate anxiety about your child potentially developing a mental illness as a parent who has mental illnesses?
Good question. Cool.
So, question was how to mitigate or reduce anxiety if you're a parent
Yep.
with mental illness and you're having a child. So,
Yep.
pregnant mother, for example, or father.
Yep.
The father's not pregnant, but probably not. Is going to be a father to be.
Father to be. Yeah. It's a really important question. I think a lot of people probably wonder that. And maybe if they don't even wonder it, I think it's an important question to ask yourself if you do struggle with mental illness, how does that affect how you feel about having your own children, even before you decide to be a parent? That might be actually, I know people have decided not to have kids because they worry about their own mental illness
Right.
and either passing it along or how will I do as a parent? And so a couple pieces to the question. So one is first mitigating your anxiety.
Becoming less anxious about it.
Yep. And then there's also another almost implicit question in there, I think, about you're worried about your kids having mental illness.
Yeah. And what to do about that as a parent.
Yeah.
So it's worrying about it and it's actually doing stuff.
Right.
So worrying about it's probably, I mean, you worry about your kids anyway. So worrying
Yeah.
about that for your child, if they carry genetics or that kind of thing, or you struggle in other ways and are worried about passing it on to your kids. So worrying about it makes some sense.
Yeah. Embrace all feelings, guide all behaviors. So you got to embrace your feelings on it, that you
Right.
are anxious about it. But then you want to make sure that the feelings are right sized, because you can also project our feelings onto things,
Right.
especially our kids or other relationships.
Right. And it occurs to me that we have some parents who will specifically say during the interview, I'm worried because, particularly, if it's a mother, I'm worried because my son looks just like his father or is acting just like his father, whom she's divorced from. And, she believes has serious mental illness. Or a father saying, she's acting just like her mother. So
Yeah.
that is a question we actually get from parents of
It's
teens.
profound. Yeah. Yep. I'm just laughing because it's funny how in that scenario, it's the other person that you're worried about, right? Like, the dad versus like
Yeah,
yourself.
you never worry about yourself.
Right. So it's really insightful from our caller to even be looking at self. I think that's one of the really great, beautiful part of the question is that you're bringing that first step of reflection into thinking about parenting your kids, right? Like reflecting on self and who am I in the world? Because that would probably be step one, right? Is like you really got to make sure that you're attending to your mental health as a parent, especially if you know you have a mental health illness.
Right.
Maybe you have a diagnosis or not.
Particularly if you're pregnant, it's
Yep.
really important you take care of yourself for medical reasons as well.
Yep.
So probably starts there, making sure you're caring for mental health and physical health as well, because that's, part of
Linked.
your child's development.
Yeah. Yeah. And so making sure that you are doing whatever you need to do to keep your mental health in check and feeling good about, we all have ups and downs, but generally feeling like you're practicing your healthiest life possible. And then thinking about whether you have a child who's already alive and, out in the world, or if you're going to have a baby soon, maybe really examining, what is my particular mental illness? Like, what do I struggle with? And what are the behavioral components of it that could affect my parenting?
Right. Because like everything else, we divide it into biology, and that may be something you're worried about transmitting genetically.
Right. Which you probably can't do anything about that.
Not a whole lot. So it's actually a very good thing to be aware that your children inherit everything from you, right?
Said marry a stud or something like I did.
Yeah, good job. But they'll inherit all kinds of good things from you, and they'll inherit some issues as well. And from a biological point of view, they may inherit depressive stuff, or bipolar disorder, or be more anxious than
your average
kid. And that certainly may happen, and they inherit all kinds of wonderful things like your smile, and that's a little bit like inheriting hypertension, high blood pressure. And if it's something milder like predisposition to becoming more depressed or predisposition towards anxiety, it might be like inheriting genes for hypertension. If it's something sort of more significant like bipolar disorder, it may be more like inheriting, I'm just picking, type 2 diabetes or something like that,
Good example.
where you have to care for yourself a little bit more, be more aware that that's, a possibility.
Right. So the biological piece, we can't control that.
Too late.
You
couldn't control it anyways.
Right. But we could be more aware of it. Right. Know what the warning signs are. But then also too, not going too far with that and projecting, like a 2-year-old still going to have tantrums, whether it's future bipolar or not.
Right.
And not overseeing it in everything. I wonder too with addiction or alcoholism, I think sometimes people can almost create narratives about their kids or about family members that can, I don't want to say create it, but it can nourish and balance the narratives we come up with. So if every time your kid has a tantrum, it's something more than just them expressing their feelings, you're starting to create a narrative of their life for them that can be impactful in their identity and in your relationship with them.
I would say probably see that more than the reverse. Being aware that something may develop or a kid may be more prone to certain things is important. I think we see a lot of parents who probably are sort of too anxious about it, and that comes across in their parenting.
Yeah. See a lot of anxious parenting nowadays.
Yeah, we really do.
Yeah.
Which is good in a way, but it's probably too anxious.
Much. I think it's too much because it takes some of the joy out of it. And I think it also like we've talked about in past episodes, parents are obviously super important, but we aren't the be all end all in our kids' lives either.
Right.
And we sometimes have to get out of the way and let nature and biology and life unfold.
Take its course. And if you're an anxious parent, your kid's going to be anxious in some way. It comes across.
Yeah, right? Like when those around you are anxious, you often feel more anxiety.
Right.
So you actually can create it in your kids. Keep thinking too about so the other biological component. I don't know if maybe you wouldn't call this biological, but say moms who have postpartum depression.
Yes.
Oftentimes studies have shown that moms who struggle with that often have a hard time connecting with the baby and vice versa. So if you have mental health illness prior to having a baby, you can be more at risk for postpartum depression. So you want to be mindful of that in getting the support you need after having your baby, and understanding that your mood as a parent really does affect how your child connects with you.
Yeah, even attachment. You can have attachment issues with a mother who's very depressed.
Exactly. A big part of that, I think, is the blunted affect.
Right.
So the baby isn't getting feedback from your face about how you're feeling and connecting with them. You're less likely to make eye contact if you're depressed, less likely to smile at the baby. And these are all things that help your baby grow and develop and start to create social bonds.
The more we talk about it, the more I think this is more about taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
It's recognizing something which is important to watch for, but it has much more to do how you take care of yourself during pregnancy, how you take care of yourself afterward. And we talk about role modeling, right?
Yep.
If you take care of yourself and remain a positive role model, that's more important in many respects than the biology, at least early on.
Yeah. And then knowing if something were to develop that you can't control who your child necessarily is going to become.
Right.
Sometimes kids have their own, all the time, kids have their own journey and their own path that they have to take. And despite our best efforts, or despite all our failings, however you want to look at it, they're going to have their journey.
Right.
So keeping it right-sized as well. It's paradoxical.
Like everything we talk about.
I know. don't know if that's just an easy out.
It's totally easy out because you can say two different things and just say it's paradoxical and be right.
Yeah. You're just full of shit.
But you should take comfort in the fact, too, if you're aware of these things, you're much more likely to identify if problems do develop, like a kid heads towards substance abuse. One of the major problems is this stuff being unidentified until late in life, and you end up being middle-aged and having trouble with alcohol or drugs because it wasn't identified. So the college should take heart that being aware of these things is also protective for their child. So
Right.
I'm thinking increasingly this college should be less anxious.
Yeah.
I mean,
like
a little
that.
bit of anxiety is okay.
Yeah. Embrace it, but guide your behaviors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope we settled this question.
Yeah. I'm feeling good about
I
it.
feel pretty good about it. Should we try another one?
Try another one.
Let's try
Okay.
another one. Do we have another caller?
We do. Caller.
If you could provide any other additional support to staff and our clients that you are not able to now, not to your own fault, what would that be?
So, what kinds of support and help can we offer to both staff and to children?
Yeah, that we don't. Like, the way I kind of see the question is kind of fun, right? Like, if we had endless resources and abilities,
Oh,
what would
boy.
we do? First thing that comes to me right now is I would love to help children and their parents more versus like right now we really focus in on teenagers.
Oh, yeah.
I think it would be really cool to be able to have a PHP or an IOP for kids. Like, so like 8 and up, or, 8 to 12,
Yeah.
or even like 6 to 12.
So for folks who aren't familiar with our model, that's a day type program for a few hours where we can do therapy and we can meet with kids and their families, and some kids may do better with meds.
Yep.
So having an IOP or PHP, which is what we have for teens right now, would be great. We've talked about that before. It's just very hard to pull these things off.
Yeah, and to get enough staff who can commit to it, because it's not like a full-time position when you have
Right.
IOP, but yeah, I think that would be really important for our community, and because it would be really, I think often of the teenagers we see and the parents we meet and how they often say, I really wish we had this earlier.
Getting early is important,
Yep.
right? So when I was training in Connecticut, there was a younger one. It's interesting. It was quite different than working with teens because
Very different. Yeah.
on one hand, I think the problems are a little less complex, but on the other hand, they have less self-control. So
Yeah.
it was a lot more lively in some
Yeah.
ways.
Playful.
Not just playful, but difficult.
Yeah. We did a summer camp that was for kids, children struggling with mental health issues. Rick and I one summer. We did it at Direction. Remember
And
that?
How old were they?
They were, I think, from 8 to 12,
Okay,
maybe
so
7.
that's the same group. How was that?
Yeah, it was wonderful. We loved it. Rick and I had a really good time. I mean, Rick's really good working with kids too. He's got a
Right.
good energy for it. And the kids, I think, really took to our approach at the time.
Right.
And learned a lot about themselves. And we also shared some parenting tips with the parents in the program that helped them connect with their kids more and parent in a way that was less arguing and fighting with the kids and more teaming up.
So what kinds of stuff did you do?
We did a lot of activities in the program.
Yeah.
We did walks, we did music, we did art, we played. We would sit down for very short groups. We could sit down for an hour and a half with the teenagers here
Right.
once they get going and really
Lower
talk.
attention span.
But we would do shorter groups throughout the day.
And is the problem reimbursement, actually getting paid for that? Was that the ultimate problem?
Meaning, why
Or
did we didn't
time or
continue it?
staffing? Yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't really a problem. I think it's just, staffing ongoing. And just,
Reimbursement is difficult in the whole field. That's part of the reason we can't offer more. And it's part of the reason other people don't go into the field
Yep.
is, unfortunately, we don't get paid for our services the way that we believe we should be. I mean,
Yeah.
probably everybody says that, but
Yeah.
we think society should invest more in this kind of thing.
From a doctor's point of view, prescribing medication, does that become scarier for you with kids?
Prescribing with the younger ones, I prescribe less for younger ones. Mostly we talked before about a lot of this stuff not showing up until later. I prescribe less. I don't know.
Like if we had a children's IOP program, is that intimidating to you in any way? Because I think a big part of why there aren't other programs out there is that people feel more intimidated working with kids, and especially when you're introducing potential medication.
Right. Not more intimidating, just would prescribe less, not because I'm worried about it, but just because they need it less, I think.
Yep.
Fewer of them could use it. So it'd be more groups and psychosocial, and family stuff's probably
the
more
parenting
important.
thing is even more important.
Parents are bigger in their lives at that point.
Yep.
More inpatient beds would be great, just for the kids who actually need
spot for a
need
little
a
bit.
safe place. And residentials where kids were, so much has to do with families with these young kids.
Yep.
We had New Hampshire Hospital recently close their whole child unit for a number of reasons, and we have very few resources for that. Mm-hmm. Outpatient therapy would be nice, right? Family stuff.
I would really enjoy being able to do direction field trips.
Oh yeah.
With the kids, even if it would be like an overnight adventure somewhere.
Right.
And I just saw an eagle flying around outside. That was cool.
Benefits of huge windows.
Yeah, we have an awesome spot here. Airplanes and birds and stuff. But I'd love to do more adventure-based stuff, because I think the teenagers in particular really want to spend more time together with one another and enjoy the groups that they create here, and it would be a fun experience. Oh, and another thing I think would be really fun is coming up with some sort of rite of passage for teenagers that we help facilitate on some level here. I don't know what the hell that would look like, to be honest, but
Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I know we've talked previously about, I think we did talk about rites of passages, but you mentioned high school graduation as really one of the only.
Is it Western or is it U.S. or right? Because this happens more in other cultures. You're saying,
yeah, rites of passage, and I think for females, there's more. Like we start menstruating, around 12 maybe or whatever, and then eventually we go through childbirth, less and less it seems, but. So those are some natural rites of passage from childhood into the more adult world.
Right.
But I think other than high school graduation, we don't really symbolically sit down and recreate or mark the transition in a way that invites kids to reflect and embark on this next adventure in their life. And I think that can be something for culture that can subconsciously, I think, impact the participants in that process, and also just as a space holder culturally for us that we all reflect on jointly.
Latin America and quinceaños, right?
Okay.
Turning 15. That's a very cool one, because that's sort of in between start of adolescence and 18. We should do quinceaños.
Okay.
We could do it for boys too. I think it's
just girls.
I
I
think
don't
it's
know much
usually
about
girls.
it.
I could be wrong about that.
Okay, we'll have to look into
Do we
some.
have any fact checkers here?
We have to hire one, I think, soon. 15.
It's 15 years old, but is it girls or boys? We think it's just girls.
Okay.
But we should do it for boys too.
I feel like Rick would be really helpful in coming up with some sort of really cool rite of passage.
Oh, yeah. One of the practical problems for field trips and stuff, we've talked about this, is both reimbursement,
Yep.
but also liability. As a business owner, you
Yeah.
have to think about that, because it's a risk, particularly in the United States where there's so much legal stuff and a risk of liability. That's something that, limits a lot of things we do, where kids can walk. Yep. If we could go out in cars, or, it's too bad. It would be nice if there were some way to solve that problem so we didn't have to think about it so much.
Yeah. Yep. What other resources?
As far as staff go, we always like to be able to pay them better.
Yep.
Right? As our sound crew probably thinks.
Yep.
Offering full-time is great.
Yeah. Yep.
you
More
have the
hours so
spectrum,
that
yeah.
you can actually create a whole life out of your work here.
And to start out in this work, you often are younger and sometimes are in school. And then on the other side, you become a licensed therapist or doc or something that's so far removed that there's this sort of period of time in between where you're not able to do this. It'd be nice if there were I don't even know what that would look like, but
Yeah. Meaning like during that period of time, having more ability to make more income in the field.
I think so.
Yeah.
Something in between being licensed
Right.
and just either interning or
Entry level.
entry level.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot, I don't think. And you look at the difference between the two, and you're talking, was it 2 years of, let's say 4. So for med school, it'd be 12 years.
Yeah, to get your master's, to be licensed, if you want to be a master's level clinician, you have to also do 8 years. So 4 undergrad and typically 4 masters.
Yeah. It's a good question, though.
Yeah. What other things for clients do you like, kids and their families? What else would be useful for them?
God, if we could do more parenting stuff.
Yep.
Again, it's partially a reimbursement thing.
Yep.
But this is part of the reason we started the podcast, right? To reach more
Right.
people. Be nice if, love to go into schools more, right?
That'd be fun.
It would be really fun.
I'd love to have more alumni from our program come back to talk to the current kids
Right.
too. I think that would be a good role model example for kids.
Right.
That'd be fun.
We're going to sit down and talk about if we, I guess one of the final things I think about was the idea of some kind of much bigger program where there's a school component or a
Yep.
school substitute,
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot actually.
an academy.
So the kids who struggle with going to school, feel it's a hostile environment or just aren't successful there, they could do a schooling component here so that they can keep moving forward in school and also get the mental health treatment that they need and be in a better environment.
And it could be sort of a model because we always talk about problems with the school system and the problems kids run into. And it would be great to start a model which theoretically could be replicated and might replace
School for some kids.
school for some kids.
Yeah. And what would that take? Like hiring, right? Like a educator, someone who knows about schooling and all
Ton
that.
of money, I think.
Yep.
A lot of regulations, I think. I think you have to meet certain benchmarks. But we should talk about it more.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
So yeah, I think that's we're going to talk about if we like got $10 million from some
Right.
generous podcast listener, what we would do with that. So we're ready.
So we're ready.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Our first 2 questions,
I think they're pretty good.
I think we did okay. So anyways, let's see if we can get some more questions. And
Yeah, please call in.
Please call.
When should they call?
I think day or night.
Day or night.
24 hours per day.
Anytime. And do they call your number?
Right now, like my cell phone?
Yeah.
Right now, I think they could call. Actually, the best way would be to do our email address, which I believe is contact. Is there medforthat.com? It's on our website, and you can email a question, and we can get follow up with a phone call, which makes
Okay.
it more real for listeners. So
Great.
send us an email, and
And we'll go from there.
we'll go from there.
And we'll call you.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Is There a Med for That? For more information about our podcast and our clinical work, visit our website at medforthat.com.
If you've got questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to email us at contact@medforthat.com. We'd love to answer some of your questions on air.
Have a great day.